to the City of Indianola Special Council meeting today on April 16th. I'm calling this meeting to order. Please stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Jackie, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Phelan, Parker,
Present.
Plain,
Here.
Schroeder, here, Southall, Marchant,
Present.
Mayor Pepper.
Present. All right, we'll move into open forum. If there's anybody here that would like to speak about anything not on the agenda, there's a form for you to fill out. Please come forward, state your name and your address. Seeing none, hearing none, we'll then move into our consent agenda.
Mayor, I believe the gentleman in the audience want to speak on the case. Do you want to speak on the K Street one?
We just had questions about it. We're happy to wait until you guys are actually discussing it, if that's preferable to you guys.
So procedurally, these are on consent, so it'd be voted on in one swoop. So they could pull it. We can talk about it then. We can certainly ask questions after the meeting as well. So if it's kind of just logistical questions.
It's mostly logistical and funding questions. If you prefer, if we do it after, that's fine.
It's entirely up to your preference and that of the chair.
So let's get the motion, and then I would like to hear their questions first. Let's do that. So
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Okay. Gentlemen, if you want to come forward, state your name and your address, please, and then you can ask your questions.
Good morning. My name is Jesse Beckford. I live at 708 South K Street. I'm here with my neighbor, Jim Berkeley, who is at
1007 South G.
He's got a lot of frontage on K Street too.
My property butts up on K Street quite a bit.
We saw that you guys were looking at the grant approval process for the paving project for K Street, and we had some general questions about the funding process and the process for K Street in general. So I guess the first question was, if we're looking at the funding here for the grants, we were curious to know what percentage you guys are hoping to get grant funding for the paving project as a whole.
If you do.
So, Grant Council,
You can just step back for COVID reasons.
Absolutely.
AP
Just
can answer.
that way,
Yeah.
that way the speaker goes through the TV
Yeah, they can
system.
hear better.
so we are planning to apply for 80-20 match. So 80% from the federal grant, 20% from the local match, and that's only for the construction side of it. Design side, we will start our design side next fiscal year, but the construction inspection and the construction is where we do the 80-20 match.
So it's 80%. So we're applying 80% of the overall project total is what, AP? The estimate at this particular point in time.
It's 4.4, 4.5 or 4.6, sorry, 4.6.
4.6 million. So of that, 80% of that is what we're applying for. And then the 80% number is?
Right, so sorry, so 4.6 is the overall cost, and the design cost is roughly $414,000.
I guess let's, so the design cost is already built into this fiscal year budget. So let's set that aside because that's already budgeted for just the construction cost.
So the construction cost is $4.2 million. So 80% of that is for federal grant.
And that equates to about how much in dollars?
3.36.
Is what we're asking the federal government.
Correct. So then the remaining portion would be paid for.
Thank you, AP. Jesse?
So then a follow-up question to that, for the remaining part that we paid for by the city, the 20% of that particular cost, what is the city's plan for acquiring the funding and allocating the funding for that? Is it going to be a loan, increased tax assessments, or what's the idea there?
Okay. AP, or is that Andy?
Andy, can you speak to that?
It's yet to be determined. It's yet to be determined on what the funding would actually be. I mean, it's hard to say right now what it would be because we don't have the grant yet. And we don't have the engineer's estimate of cost yet. We have had the council do an authorization for that, for the tax levy for the 2021 bond, which would be for Hillcrest and K Street. And then we'll have to figure out how we're going to be structuring that. I think we originally knew that special assessments were available on this because it is a reconstruction. It's a you're doing it's a gravel road changing into an asphalt. So under our policy, we are allowed to do special assessments, but how we go about doing that and how we structure that funding and everything, that is yet to be determined.
Ladies and gentlemen of council, James Berkeley. I again have a property that butts up against K Street, right by the Jehovah's Witness Church. So I have a very significant amount of property that butts up against K Street. My evaluation of the improvements that are proposed for K Street, it said it was going to improve the city, but there's only a limited amount of individuals on K Street that it is actually going to impact. Yeah, six homes. So we're going to, in essence, charge the taxpayers and levy money on us for an improvement that, to what extent? What is this going to do for the city? I, for one, don't want more streetlights on K Street. I like having things more dark down that way. There's enough light on the street for people to find not only the church property, but the neighboring street signs as well as housing addresses. You improve and pave that street, people already speed down K Street as it is, as a gravel street. I have called the police on different occasions, had them sit in my driveway and provide a speed trap, and still people speed down that road. So I guess my question to the council is, who is this actually improving K Street for? The Deer Creek community? Because if that's the case, I suggest then that the Deer Creek residents then pay for these improvements, because I don't believe myself, my fellow neighbor, and the four other neighbors that live there would agree that putting asphalt and more streetlights on K Street is in any way going to improve the quality of our living. Thank you.
Yeah.
Provide some history. So first, to clarify, this the plan would be for concrete, not asphalt. So the council back in 2017, based on constituent feedback, directed staff to begin working with our engineers on a plan for that. So over the last 4 years, it's been in the planning phase, working with the council on what does the design look like. The direction that was received was scale it back significantly from what the previous, I don't remember the exact date, 1990 comp plan had called for. So eliminating the boulevard feel and really kind of keeping it more simplified, but paving it with concrete. So that was the direction. So so we've been working on that process. The funding for the engineering and necessary steps to bid it out for construction is in, as AP had mentioned, it's in the fiscal year that begins July 1st of 2021. So we'll begin that process at that point. So the action today is only to try to seek the grant. The purpose for seeking the grant is to lessen the amount of dollars that the city organization and the taxpayers would have to pay towards that. Aside from the, and part of the reason why, a lion's share of the reason for the constituents, the residents of Mineola that were asking that this be pursued is the fugitive dust that does not just impact the adjoining properties, but does go into the other neighborhoods. But then there's also added increased maintenance costs for the city as part of that. So our crews have to regularly grade and then apply the calcium chloride. It does present challenges with plowing and things like that. It is very costly and very time consuming to maintain when we have 147 miles of road. So that was another aspect of the direction for this. As Andy had mentioned, the financing has not yet been finalized, and that's because we don't have bids in place. So we're still in the design process. The design process is needed to get the bids. This is part of it. We're trying to get federal dollars to help offset any costs. Andy did mention we have a pre-authorization for some borrowing for that. That is overall to the city, not just the individual adjoining properties. The city council does have, as part of the policy, to assess adjoining properties when converting to a gravel road. That is an option that has not been finalized, that has not been pursued as of yet. In fact, the time that we have done it, in the time that I've been here, it's been, we did it on East Iowa Avenue, and there we had a federal grant that brought down the cost, and then working with the adjoining properties to make sure that it was not impactful to those property owners. So not assessing for everything, but assessing like the basics that serve that property. At this point in time, the action before the council is only to apply for this grant, to apply for federal funding in hopes that we receive it, to allow us to not have to go through some of these other mechanisms to provide the funding for a project such as this.
I think that's the key point, is that this is to apply for the grant money. And to me, it feels like a wasted opportunity for us not to apply for it. If there is some federal help, why wouldn't we, shouldn't we be trying to get that money, then determining what that impact looked like, as well as there's some real benefit to this. And the other piece is, this has come up very, very quickly. The federal government released this in a pretty tight time frame
Yeah, I mean,
for
it was-
cities to respond.
Like within the last week and a half, 2 weeks.
And
So-
due to our street paving project report, we
Right.
have a sense of where we
Right.
could apply these dollars quickly and be able to respond to these grants.
So the intention, again, the action for today is
Just
to
grants.
ensure that we can do this, and hopefully we're successful, so that we can minimize any sort of burden on the entire community, along with those adjacent to the construction area.
I guess the next question then that raises, sir, is if the grant is unsuccessful at that time, is this project dead? Or are you going to continue to proceed with the project and then levy the expense onto the citizens of Indianola?
That is part of the process. So once we get the engineering done, do the design work, every step along the way, we get more information to provide the elected officials with that information. They need to make those decisions.
Okay, my next question is, you said back in 2017 that this came from on K Street, South K Street specifically, from constituents in that ward. Now, I, for one, my wife and I purchased our property in 2018, so we were here right after that time period. I know the property across the road from our place that currently is now owned by Brian Busmus, who owns a large heating and cooling business here in town. He did not live there. That property was owned by other individuals. So who, and the people that are in the bed and breakfast down the road actually purchased that after my wife and I moved in. So who were the constituents that said they wanted more streetlights and paving done to K Street? Because that, to me, is a question.
Yeah.
Because there's only 6 of us that are living and residing that abut to K Street. So who is the impact?
Yeah, the neighborhood in that ward is who had really spoke out and came before the council. That road classification is not just a residential road. It serves the different classification, and our engineer can explain that differently, but the type of roadway that it is not just a residential road. So it connects, what is the technical class?
Collector.
It's a collector. So would you mind explaining what a collector is and the distinction between that arterial and, please, thank you.
So South K Street is a collector type road, which is federally functionally classified by the Iowa DOT. So what that means is it receives much more traffic than a regular local street. So it is a major connector to Lake Aquabi. It connects to the Downey Park. So it connects not just to the neighborhood, does not just serve the residents living in that neighborhood, but it also functions as a major connector to major functionalities of the street. So does that answer the question?
Yeah.
And the collector street is typically wider, right, than an arterial?
So collector, yeah, it's generally more, it receives more traffic.
Mhm.
Functionally, how they come at that conclusion is how much traffic does it receive? And then depending on that, Iowa DOT functionally classifies that.
And the classification system is really important, and that is what allows this road to become eligible for a certain type of federal funding. If it did not have the classification, and the classification is IDOT has a big say in the classification of roads. So some of your side streets in the neighborhoods or cul-de-sacs would not become eligible. We've got one of the projects that we look at that is actually going to be under construction within this next calendar year is Valley Place, which is just in horrible condition between Iowa Realty and TrueBank and Taco Bell. Well, that was a project that we had slated, ready to go. We wanted to see if that was eligible. Unfortunately, because it's not classified in a manner that the federal government deems it needed to be, it's not eligible. So different roads are classified differently for the type of traffic as well as the amount of traffic that it conveys. So while it does front your property, it is meant to serve a much greater population than just the 6 homes or whatever the homes are on that roadway.
And, you know, I wanted to mention that, you know, any street in Indianola is not used just by the residents that live there.
Right.
And when we used to assess for all street repair, repavings even, my 75-foot frontage cost us $10,000. We gladly paid it because it's not only used by us, but by everybody in town, basically. So it's not just the people who have their property against that.
I might add too, since this is my ward, that as far back as probably 2015, 16, before I ever even thought about running for council, I know that the previous owners of the bed and breakfast and Busmas property were working with the then community development director towards paving of this street. So this has been in conversation for years and years. And I'm sympathetic to your position, Jim. And I do want to go off the conversation and say thank you for your service. I really sincerely mean that.
Thank you.
So I don't want this to be a personal thing between you and me because I'm the ward representative and I live in the adjoining neighborhood. It really has very little to do with that. I have people regularly who live up on South R call me about all the traffic and complain about the condition of that street, so much to the point this spring we received some pretty angry messages about that from people who live up there and bought on the premise that theirs was a cul-de-sac, and then West 13th was opened up and it became like kind of the on-ramp to 92 because K is gravel and bumpy and ridgy. And so I'm sympathetic to your position, being a property owner, a recent purchaser. I don't know how to please everybody here. I just don't know what to do.
Well, I do understand that, ma'am, and to speak to Mr. Kling's statement, okay, so $10,000 for 75 feet, I have approximately 300 feet of frontage. So frankly, if the city's idea is to go ahead and, again, ultimately tax the citizens, I'm afraid that would drive my wife and I out of the community, which we have grown to love. And we love our property. We love having the quiet, and ma'am, I drive down K Street all the time. And going down to Downey Park, yes, there's some limited traffic that goes that way. I do not see a lot of boats being hauled down K Street towards Aquabi.
No, they're coming
yes,
through.
it is a connecting road to Aquabi, and it's very convenient. But again, I wish that you would take into consideration that having an in-town acreage, even though we are on the far side of the southwest side of town, having that tranquility and that quietness, there's really limited dust impact. I know Jesse's house does get some dust impact, but for the most part, a lot of that is caused by the construction equipment and contractors that are driving down to develop yet another housing area into the community. So I guess I really would like to strongly encourage and suggest to, if the grant is not approved, for this project to not go forward is my thought and feeling. So thank you for your time.
Jim, I just want to add to that. I think you're right that you probably don't see a lot of traffic going down there because they come down our street, West 13th, South O, and West 14th. Those are the people that are complaining about the dust and the traffic and the lack of tranquility and all of that. So I understand what you're saying. I don't know how to please everybody, and I get angry messages. I see social media posts about me personally, and this isn't personal. And I hope that we can get past that. Typically, when we live in a city, streets are paved. I just had that happen to my dad right before he died at age 97, $20,000 bill. We paid it. We had no choice. I don't like it. I didn't like it then. I don't like that part of it, but that unfortunately I think is where we're at.
And I can just, at this point in time, we're going to be doing the engineering. We don't have the cost. Right, we don't have the cost. We don't know if this is authorized, if we'll be able to, if we get it, great. We evaluate where we're at then. If we don't get it, we evaluate where we're at then, and there's decision points for the council. And as the elected officials know, there is a balancing act. You're not going to be able to please everybody. You've got to do that. You've got to weigh the pros and cons as well as the financial impacts and what the options are. The assessment is one option. And as the council knows, we go through a variety of different evaluations to determine what is that right funding mechanism, what's available, what's not, what works well, what's not. And our goal is to make sure that the impact on the residents is the least possible. Make sure we're providing the best quality services, best quality infrastructure, but at the most affordable price. So that's the.
I'd like to add something. Sure. I want, thanks to our staff, they were on top of this, and the elected officials, I think, have done a really nice job of doing studies and being prepared for this type of thing. And we've given flexibility to our staff that they were prepared for this and had the ability to go out and say, we potentially have this project that we can apply for this grant. We're totally prepared to apply for it. Had we had an inferior staff that wasn't on top of it, then what we'd be talking about today is how are we going to pay for $4.6 million with no grant at all? So what I hope you walk away from is we're trying to protect a lot of people's interest here by getting this grant. We have not made any determination on if the grant does come through, how are we going to come up with the additional money? I've been a strong opponent to assessing properties the way we have assessed them. I'm not saying we won't do it or can't do it or whatever the case might be, but there might be a different way. And we just need the flexibility to go forward trying to get this grant. Because if we don't, then we're talking a big dollar picture. And will we do it or won't we do it? I don't know. It's yet to be determined. But right today, we need to go for this grant. So that's the purpose of this warning is let's see if we can get the money. And then we'll try to figure out, if we do get the money, the best way possible with the, hopefully the lowest impact possible. I'm not going to say there won't be any. That's probably silly because there's always a benefit, whether you want it or don't want it. Paving is a far better route in the city. Yeah, I wish we could pave every gravel road that's in this city, but we can't.
We have too many
Yes.
at this point.
But what we have to do is try to pick them off as we can. And we're, right now we're able to get part of East Iowa. Hopefully we'll be able to get K Street with the least impact possible. But will there be some? I'm guessing there will be. But if we don't vote on this today and get this resolution passed to get a chance of getting this grant, then we're talking really big dollars. So I hope you understand that that's what we're trying to do is something proactive from a standpoint of funding.
I do want to say I appreciate you guys coming in because
Yes,
so far, all we've heard is
Yes.
complaints about
Yes.
not paving.
and
we needed-
professionalism.
Yeah.
I really appreciate
Yeah.
the professionalism and
I find it doesn't pay to come in and be aggressive and attack the council. I mean,
Right.
my position is I love this community. My wife went to high school here. We moved back to this community because of those family ties. We bought the in-town acreage because we wanted more room. We wanted quiet. We wanted our space. And we love our property. And, it has assessed on our taxes have gone up over 100% since we purchased the property. So that's a different animal for a different time. But this, when I saw it, because our property butts up against both G Street and K Street, it is a major impact to us. And I know in talking with Brian, his determination is he bought that extra land that used to be owned by the Nazarene Church to leave it as vacant property because of the tranquility. And that's, I understand, Councilman. I want to go forward and apply for any and all federal monies that are possible. And I totally support that. I myself am a state employee and I understand the need for federal support. I just hope that if it does not pass, that it will be strongly reconsidered whether or not to go forward with this project. And that's my concern. So thank you again for your time. I think Jesse had a comment.
I just have a quick question about the planning of it. For the 4.2 million for actual construction costs, how far south along K Street was that planned to go? Is it going to go to the city limits or just to 14?
So the planning that was approved in the capital improvement plan was from Highway 92 to 17th Street.
Thank you.
And then last question that I have, has there been a study conducted to compare the cost of current maintenance on the gravel roadway to the concrete surface that will be put down, especially considering the additional requirement of salt application, as well as the large number of large tractors and semi-trucks that go up and down K Street, going out of the city down to southern Warren County for the farm services?
That was part of the evaluation that council made back in that was done and presented to the council in 2017 as part of their direction.
And did it show an overall net decrease
Yeah.
in maintenance costs?
In the long run, yes. I mean, short term, no, obviously, but the amount of time and effort, the more traffic that happens, you can only grow your road so much, and you got to bring in tonnage of rocks and.
So that is one of the roads that frequently gets to be repaired, the ditch section because of the traffic. It is one of the gravel roads that receives, compared to other gravel roads, that receives more traffic in there. And the ditch conditions there frequently we have to repair it. So not just the dust control, we repair the surface maintenance, the ditch frequently on that location. So.
That's all the questions I had. I appreciate the council's time very much. I thank you for letting us have our questions and then speak to you on the matter.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
both.
you.
We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Council, any other questions? John, I know you're online. Just want to make sure you have a chance.
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Jackie, let's do a roll call, please.
Councilmember Parker,
Aye.
Plain,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
What are they gonna do? Was there other dogs there?
Motion carries.
That's all we have.
That's all you had.
Yep. Any other business? And I'll take a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 There it is. Motion carries.
Forgot to
Thank
get
you all
mine.
very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done. So.